The text came at 11:47 on a Tuesday night. I was still in scrubs. I hadn't eaten since noon. My phone lit up on the counter, and I almost didn't look. But I did. It was from my dad. Skip Christmas Eve this year. Marcus's fiancée is a physician. It'll be uncomfortable for you. I read it twice. Then a third time. Not because I didn't understand the words. Because I did. That's when I realized something was very wrong. Let me give you just enough background to understand what happened next. I'm a physician credentialing manager at a mid-sized regional hospital. I've been in healthcare administration for 11 years. My job is quiet, precise, and invisible to most people. I sit behind a desk. I verify licenses. I confirm training records. I cross-reference disciplinary histories. I make sure that the people who hold scalpels and write prescriptions are exactly who they say they are. It is, without exaggeration, one of the most important jobs in a hospital. And almost nobody knows it exists. My brother Marcus is 4 years younger than me. We were never particularly close, not enemies, just different. He works in commercial real estate. He drives a car that costs more than I make in a year and considers that a personality. For a long time, our family accepted that he was simply the successful one. I was the one who went to graduate school twice, worked nights, and never bought anything impressive enough to mention at dinner. When Marcus announced his engagement 6 months ago, my mother called me first. She was thrilled. She said the woman's name was Renata. She said she was a doctor. I said that was wonderful. And I meant it. I had no reason not to. The first time I met Renata was at a family dinner in October. She was polished. Confident. She talked about her residency in broad, comfortable terms. She mentioned a hospital in another state. She mentioned a specialty. She laughed at the right moments. She touched Marcus's arm when she spoke about their future. My mother watched her like she was already a daughter. My dad refilled her wine glass twice, before he refilled anyone else's. I didn't feel jealousy. I want to be clear about that. What I felt was something quieter. A small, dull wrongness. I couldn't locate it at first. It wasn't anything she said. It wasn't the way she looked. It was something in the way she talked around things. The way a specific question got a general answer. The way she smiled just a half second before she should have. I've spent 11 years reading the paperwork of people who are lying about their credentials. You develop a sense. Not a certainty. Just a pull. I didn't say anything that night. A few weeks later, my mother mentioned that Renata had applied to a hospital nearby. She said it casually, the way you mention weather. My stomach went still. I asked which hospital. My mother said she wasn't sure. Something close to us, she thought. I nodded. I changed the subject. I drove home in the dark thinking about the specific wording on the text my father would send me 6 weeks later. Uncomfortable for you. Not, give them space. Not, let Marcus have this. Uncomfortable. For me. As if proximity to whatever Renata was claiming to be was the problem. As if my discomfort was the risk. I brought it up once with my mother, carefully, gently. I said I thought it was odd that Renata never mentioned her medical school. My mother said I was being competitive. My aunt, who was visiting, laughed and said I should be happy for my brother. I let it go. I smiled. I helped with the dishes. So I stopped reacting. And I started watching. The application came across my desk on a Thursday morning. I almost didn't catch it. We process dozens of credentialing packets every month. They come in through a secure portal, sorted by specialty, assigned to reviewers on a rotating schedule. That week I had 3 orthopedic surgeons, a hospitalist, and 2 applicants for our urgent care expansion. The 6th file had her name on it. I sat very still for a moment. Then I closed my office door. In credentialing, the first thing you verify is medical school. Every physician licensed in the United States graduated from an accredited institution. That institution has a record. That record can be confirmed through the AAMC, the Association of American Medical Colleges, or directly through the school's registrar. It takes, on average, 4 business days. Sometimes less. The medical school listed on Renata's application was a real school. It exists. It is accredited. It has a website and a campus and a dean. But her name was not in their graduation records. I checked twice. I submitted a formal verification request. I cross-referenced the graduation year she listed. I searched by name variation. I searched by the student ID number she had provided. Nothing. Then I moved to her residency. She had listed a 3-year residency at a hospital in another state, in family medicine. I contacted their graduate medical education office. Standard process. Routine inquiry. They had no record of her completing a residency there. They had a record of her starting one. She had been enrolled for 14 months before leaving. The reason was listed as voluntary withdrawal. In residency language, that phrase carries weight. It means the program didn't terminate her, but it also means she didn't finish. She had no completed residency. Which means she had no board certification. Which means she had never, at any point, been a licensed practicing physician in the United States. I sat with that for a long time. I opened the state medical board database. I searched her name. I searched the license number she had provided on the application. That number existed, it was real, but it belonged to a physician in another part of the state. A woman about 20 years older than Renata. A different person entirely. What Renata had submitted was a fabricated license number attached to a real physician's credentials. That is not a mistake. That is not an oversight. That is fraud. I thought about my mother's face at that October dinner. I thought about my dad's text. I thought about the word uncomfortable. I thought about Marcus, who I don't particularly love, but who is still my brother, planning a life with someone who had constructed an entirely false identity, and was now attempting to use it to gain unsupervised access to patients. Real patients. Sick people. People who would assume she knew what she was doing. I thought about what happens when someone without medical training writes a prescription. Or misses a diagnosis. Or makes a decision in an exam room that a trained physician would never make. I closed her file. I did not call Marcus. I did not call my mother. I did not confront Renata. I understood, very clearly, that the moment she knew I had found this, the application would be withdrawn. She would have time to prepare. She would have a story. And without a formal process in motion, I would have nothing but suspicion and family drama that everyone would find ways to dismiss. Confronting them would have ruined everything. Friday morning I arrived at the office 40 minutes early. I printed everything. The application. The verification request responses. The residency inquiry and the GME office's reply. The license number and the name it actually belonged to. Screenshots of the State Medical Board database with timestamps. My own written documentation of each step, each date, each finding, formatted the way I had been trained to format internal investigation records. I made 3 copies. One stayed in a locked drawer in my office. One went into a personal folder in a secure cloud account that my employer doesn't have access to. One I drove to my apartment on my lunch break and placed in a fireproof document box I bought at a hardware store 8 years ago and have never needed until now. Then I sat down and thought carefully about who needed to know and in what order. The first call was to our hospital's chief medical officer. I didn't email. Email creates a record that moves sideways before it moves upward. I called her direct line, told her I had flagged a credentialing concern that required her attention before any further processing, and asked for 15 minutes. She gave me 30. I walked her through everything without editorializing. I laid the documents on her desk in the order I had discovered them. I answered her questions the same way. Factually. Specifically. Without adjectives. She asked if I had a personal relationship with the applicant. I told her yes. I told her the applicant was my brother's fiancée. I told her I had documented everything precisely because of that relationship, so there would be no question about my objectivity or my process. She looked at me for a moment. Then she said, "Good." The second call, which the CMO made, not me, was to the state medical board. Submitting a fraudulent license number on a credentialing application is a reportable offense. It triggers a formal investigation independent of the hospital's internal process. That investigation would look not just at our application, but at any other institution where she may have applied or worked. The third call, which I made myself on Saturday afternoon, was to a healthcare attorney I had worked with on a previous matter, a routine consultation about scope of practice documentation, years ago, but I had kept her card. I explained the situation. She told me I had handled the documentation correctly and advised me on what to expect from both the medical board process and the possibility of a civil matter if there were prior incidents. She also told me something I had already suspected. This kind of credential fraud rarely starts with a single application. By Sunday evening, the formal investigation had been opened. Renata didn't know. Marcus didn't know. My parents were making a seating chart for the rehearsal dinner. I went to the grocery store. I made dinner. I watched something I don't remember. I turned off the light at 10. They thought it was just another day. It wasn't. The medical board investigators made contact with Renata on a Wednesday. I know this because the CMO kept me informed at each step, partly because I was the originating reporter, and partly because the hospital had its own legal exposure to manage. I was not involved in the investigation directly. I didn't need to be. That's how these processes work when they are done correctly. You hand the evidence to the people with authority, and then you step back. From what I was told, and later, from what became part of the public disciplinary record, Renata had applied to 4 hospitals in our region over the preceding 18 months. She had used variations of the same fabricated credentials at each one. 2 of the hospitals had flagged inconsistencies and quietly declined her application without escalating. 1 had not completed its verification before she withdrew. Ours was the first to report. The board's investigation also found that she had briefly worked as a physician consultant at a private wellness clinic that did not require state licensure verification. She had seen patients there. She had provided written recommendations that were, legally, medical advice. The clinic was also investigated. What happened to Renata, specifically? The medical board issued a cease and desist prohibiting her from representing herself as a licensed physician in the state. The matter was referred to the district attorney's office for review of potential criminal charges related to fraud and impersonation of a licensed professional. I don't know the final outcome of that referral. Those proceedings aren't public at the early stage. But the referral happened. She and Marcus ended their engagement. I don't know the details of that conversation. I don't need to. My mother called me on a Thursday evening, about 2 weeks after everything had begun to surface. Her voice was careful, measured in a way it usually isn't. She asked me if I had known. I told her the truth. I told her I had found what I found in the course of my job, that I had followed the correct process, and that I had done what I was required to do. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, she was seeing patients. I said yes. She didn't say anything after that for a while. And I understood that the silence wasn't anger at me. It was the sound of something reorganizing itself. The way a person sounds when they realize that the story they were telling about their family was missing something important, and that the missing piece wasn't small. My dad did not call. I have not received a text from him since the one about Christmas Eve. I'm not angry about that. I notice it. I hold it somewhere. But I don't spend time waiting for an apology that may not come. Some things resolve clearly. Some things stay open. I've learned to tell the difference. Marcus called once. It was a short call. He didn't say much. I didn't either. I asked if he was okay. He said he'd been better. I told him I was sorry it happened the way it did. I meant that. What I didn't say, what I didn't need to say, was that the alternative was worse. That a person without a medical license, sitting in an exam room, with access to prescription authority and patient charts, with a family that vouched for her and a confidence that made people trust her, that person causes damage that doesn't show up all at once. It shows up later. In a missed diagnosis. In a prescription interaction. In a patient who assumed the person across from them had earned the right to be there. I think about those patients sometimes. The ones at the wellness clinic. I hope they are fine. I think most of them probably are. I also know that's luck more than anything else. My job is not exciting. I don't talk about it at dinners. It doesn't make people refill my wine glass first. But every week I sit at that desk and I verify, and I cross-reference, and I confirm, and occasionally, I find something. And when I find something, I don't shout. I don't threaten. I document it correctly, and I hand it to the right people, and I make sure the process works the way it's supposed to. That's the job. I worked late the night the investigation was formally opened. Drove home after dark. Made tea. Sat by the window for a while without turning on the television. No confrontation. No scene. No moment where I got to say the thing I'd been saving. Just the quiet fact that it was handled. That the right people knew. That the process was in motion, and I had done my part correctly. That night, everything was quiet.